Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today at worship. Whether you're online or in person, we welcome you. To learn more about us, visit us at ufcucc.org. And if you're interested in joining our weekly email distribution, drop us a line at ufcucc@gmail.com and we'll be happy to add you. Okay. Announcements this morning. What announcements do we have? Today is our offering for 1 great hour of sharing, and we'll be talking more about that today. Do we have any more Bible study? Or is that
That will be a couple weeks out.
couple weeks?
We'll be closer.
Okay. And then for youth group this week, we are not able to join. Both Shelley and I have other things that we're doing. So just let us know and we'll be going again in a couple weeks. All right. Well, thank you, everyone. Lisa, would you like to ring the bell?
Oh.
Hey. All right, let's stand and pass the peace. Okay. Peace be with you and also with you. Thank you. Right. All right, so do we have any prayers today that we want to hold up? Or joys?
There hasn't been any more Bull birthdays?
No.
Oh.
There was one on Monday. There's been one.
Whose was that?
I thought those sneak that by.
Well, happy birthday, Jacob. Well, thank you. We will, glad we're having a good week and that we're having some good birthdays and joys and celebrations. Let's pray. Lord, thank you for being here with us today, being with our conversation, with our discussion, as we learn some new things about love and what it means in your community. Giver of life, we open ourselves, body, mind, and spirit, to worship this day with an attitude of generosity and gratitude. We pray that faith, hope, and love would fill us and our faith community so that it carries into our neighborhoods and across the world, which you so lovingly created. Indeed, let love be known in all that we say and do. In the name of the one who showed us what love is, the name of Jesus. Amen. So for our text this morning, we're going to be learning more about 1 great hour of sharing, and the focus is 1 Corinthians 13:13. Love, the universal spiritual gift. Now faith, hope, and love remain. These 3 things are the greatest of those, and the greatest of those is love. So as we first get started today, before we switch into a video to learn a little bit more about 1 great hour of sharing, one question is, what does love look like? And throw a few ideas out.
Happy face.
It's a happy face. Yeah.
Taking care of others.
Mhm.
Friends.
Friends.
Family.
And our pets.
Our pets, yes. Those are awesome ideas. And so today we are going to kind of look at how that translates into one great hour of sharing. One great hour of sharing shows us what love is by helping others. There are many ways for us to experience love and to share that with others. Sometimes we just need to think about love in new ways. So with that, we'll transition to a short video. Maybe.
HDMI muting. Muted.
Why is love the greatest? Because love is action. Love is resilient. Love is compassionate. Love digs deeper, goes further, reaches higher. Love gives and then gives some more. Love is big and love is small. One great hour of sharing has been putting our love in action all around the world and right here at home for over 70 years by responding to disasters, feeding the hungry, digging wells for those who lack water, building for those who need shelter, caring for the sick, empowering the marginalized, and equipping those who are ready to change their world in the name of love, God's love. Because when all is said and done, it's love that remains. Put love into action. Give to one great hour of sharing.
So that's kind of a short synopsis of what we are raising funds for. This is the
Muting.
One Great Hour of Sharing is a world mission, a church-wide mission for United Faith, for UFC. No, for United Church of Christ, UCC. And as we kind of think about this, I'd like to share a story about somebody that has been impacted and is benefiting from the gifts of One Great Hour of Sharing. So this is a picture of Dao May
Muting.
that will bring up. She is a 56-year-old widow who lives alone in a village of San Pa Su, 40 miles north of Yangon, Myanmar. She lost her husband in 2019, and she thought her future was gone too. But she managed to maintain a small selling business, selling herbs at the marketplace in town. But then came COVID-19, where restrictions curtailed those public gatherings and at large marketplaces, and travel was disrupted in an already limited economy, reduced by farmers, and it reduced the farmers' ability to sell their products in distant and larger markets, so because they weren't able to travel. So although Danya May received some additional support from family, she knew she needed to find another way to earn money when selling herbs was no longer a possibility. So she learned that One Great Hour of Sharing partners through children or church-wide service, where sharing chickens with families who have a great need and training them in like taking care of those animals and husbandry. So within weeks of picking up 2 chickens and a rooster from a hatchery delivery truck, Dawn Yame had eggs. At first, she said, I didn't have any idea how to raise chickens, but I just wanted to try. I just fed the chickens and let the eggs hatch, she said. In fact, she let the first 12 eggs hatch into young chickens. Shortly afterward, she collected another 13 eggs from the first 2 hens and sold 10 eggs in the village to earn $1.81. That is nearly half the official daily minimum wage of $3.53 in her area. I was so happy as this was my first time making money from my chicken raising business, she said proudly. Local partners sourced a local breed of hens and roosters for villagers because they are easier to raise free range style. So in less than 5 months, Dawn Yame had 30 hens and 5 roosters with no prior experience in raising poultry. I learned that chicken meat from the local breed earns more money. She expects to soon gather 30 eggs per day, earning up to $5.42 a day in sales within a cluster of walkable villages. The newly inspired chicken farmer shared her joy and gratitude. I thank CWS for sparking the light of a more hopeful future for me. Honestly, I wasn't intentionally interested in chicken raising. Now I want to be a poultry businesswoman. With a flock of 35 hens and roosters already, I will expand the flock further. My plan is to collect and sell more birds or eggs in neighborhood villages when I'm allowed to travel. Also, I will use chicken manure in my home gardening as organic fertilizer. Dawn Yame's determination is an inspiration to anyone who hears her story. Although it would have been understandable for her to give up, she found a way to share through your gifts to one great hour of sharing. In a time that will forever be marked by the tragedy of a global pandemic, your determined generosity makes stories like Dawn Mayaw's possible, showing that the world once again, even amidst the most difficult struggles, faith, hope, and love abide. These 3, and the greatest of these is love. That is just one very short story about how one great hour of sharing has impacted one person's life. As we get into our discussion, I have a few thought starters that were kind of given by one great hour of sharing. What does love look like for your congregation? Can love be given and received via Zoom or FaceTime, through a glass window, or behind a face covering? In a post-pandemic world, we are rethinking what love looks and feels like. Fortunately, Paul reminds us that while the delivery may be different, love remains the same. Although we read parts of 1 Corinthians 13 at wedding and anniversary celebrations, Paul wrote his letter to a church in crisis. All his work to bring people to Christ is on the verge of dissolving, and his pastoral work done remotely is unraveling. The congregation of Corinth started well. Paul and his associates gathered a widely diverse group of people who committed themselves to living the life of Jesus Christ. They formed a community focused on the common good. When Paul left them, the Corinthian congregation was growing and thriving. Then things started to fall apart. As the members reverted to old ways, the community began honoring the rich over the poor, the religiously gifted over those gifted differently, the educated over the illiterate, men over women, and adults over children. In the early days, the Corinthians celebrated and embraced their diversity. Every person valued for the uniqueness, every person's gifts celebrated as they all contributed to the whole. But now their differences are problems. Paul calls them to return to love. In Paul's emaculation on love, he uses the Greek apage 9 times to emphasize its importance to and for communal life. For him, love is an expression of commitment to a life in community, one that values each person and the gifts they bring. Every contributor is celebrated because they are now family. Biology did not matter as much to Paul as the theology of community, church, and communion. His image of the body of Christ emphasizes that every person, every part of the body is vital, important, and necessary for the thriving of the whole. What does love look like for Paul? It is patient and gentle. It is not envious, boastful, arrogant, rude, selfish, irritable, or resentful. All the things that the Corinthians were exhibiting. Christian unity was turned into Christian bickering, not the behavior expected of siblings in Christ. Paul's letter is a reminder to the folks of Corinth that God calls them to a better way, a way that is centered in love and results in unity while respecting differences, a way that sees in the other a kinship that transcends familiar boundaries, a way that serves others from a place of love, a way that values others for who and what they are, the way that Paul points it to is about faith and hope and love. Howard Truman grew up during the early 1900s in Dayton, Florida, where educational opportunities for Blacks were limited. There was only 3 high schools for Blacks in the entire state. The closest private school, church-related high school was in Jacksonville, about 90 miles away. His community pooled their resources to send him to further his education. At the train station, Truman learned he would have to pay extra to ship his rope-tied trunk, and he didn't have the money. Alone and dejected, he sat on the steps of the rail station. A stranger, a Black man, asked him why he was crying. After Truman explained his situation, the man paid the extra fare. Before Truman could thank him, the man walked away, and Truman never saw him again. The dedication to his autobiography reads, "To the stranger in the railcar station in Daytona Beach, who restored my broken dreams 65 years ago." Truman went on to become a renowned scholar and theologian and influenced the likes of Martin Luther King Jr. The stranger saw a young man in despair, and his generosity made a difference. He expected nothing in return. He just saw a need and responded. The man may or may not have thought of his gift as an act of love, but it changed the trajectory of Truman's life. This is what one great hour of sharing does for people across the planet. It restores broken dreams, restores hope, and carves a path into the future. So as we think a little bit more about love and how we can experience and express love, I wanted to use this time to kind of have a conversation about what does love look like for our congregation?
think one of the expressions of the love we have is things like the care closet that we do, caring for others in the community. But also within this congregation, I feel that we care for each other. That we're on a journey together and we're supportive of each other and caring for each other along the way.
I think another example too is, their youth and the stuff they do with the other youth groups. I think that's showing love and commitment and connection. So we both receive it, I think, as being part of that, but also us sharing in that with these other, youth and making connection, and I think that's another thing.
One of the other things that I think of as love and showing that commitment is our kind of outreach to marginalized communities within our area, as well as, the world in general. Right now with all the laws and other actions that are going on, trans as well as gay, queer, LGBTQ oppression. I think anything that we do to outreach to those communities is an expression of love.
One of the things I picked up in the message that you read is that love is a lot of times where you give without anything in return, expecting anything in return. And part of that, to me, when I think of like, what are we doing in those sorts of situations? Certainly the care closet, we're not expecting anything back from anybody there. And the stuff we're doing with like Ballet Folarico, we are being a support to help them grow. And I don't think there's anything we're expecting in return. And so I think that's a key point that I heard in your message.
Well, and I think it goes beyond some of the things that this congregation actually organizes. And one of the first things that comes to my mind is the scouting work that Jacob and his brother David have done. Jacob, when you guys go out and do a project for scouting, do you expect anything back in return?
No, we usually go out to the community. We every year at our week-long camps, one of our evening activities is once a week we go and we do something for that camp. We give back to them for letting us stay there, giving that, and we just give that to them.
You guys do a lot of that kind of stuff right here in town too.
That was just a bigger example.
Yeah.
We do every year, no matter what.
So what kind of things are you doing right here? What have you done, say, over the last couple of years right here in the community that would show that?
Well, up at the by the rodeo, we on the other side we do we help out with breakfast, and we just hand people breakfast, give that. And we do a lot of smaller stuff around the community, just helping out, giving food, taking donations, other things like that, and getting things to where they need to go.
What about the roadside cleanup too?
That's another big one. We just one evening we start at 6:30, we end at 8, and we just go along our the highway by Zion, and we clean up.
What are some of the things that you do, Lisa? Do you remember?
Like,
Invisible Wounds donations?
I remember last year you guys made those books, those online reading of books for the senior citizens?
Senior citizens. You read Christmas stories online, and then we were able to share the video that went to the nursing homes, and they were able to hear all of the Girl Scouts singing or reading stories about Christmas stories.
Yeah.
Since you couldn't go visit. Can you guys, can you think of a time, or do you have an example of times when you have given, maybe and didn't even, or that somebody has given to you, similar to the story of the young man that was never able to actually thank the person that supported his dreams for the future, for like Howard Thurman, you know, how he had, do you have examples of that in your own lives?
Well, in my lifetime, I've probably had a flat tire twice, and I've yet to change it myself. Anytime that's happened to me, I've had someone stop and help me do it, and yeah, but much appreciated, but
Mhm.
you know, they wouldn't have had to, but they chose to stop and help me with it.
I can think of one example that still, this story resonates so much with me because very, very similar type of experience that I had. I had had a very bad day at work. My things were not going well. I was driving home and tears were running down my face. And somebody in a car going the opposite direction, we were stopped, and because it was very slow traffic and we were kind of stopped, and it was very obvious that I was in distress. And she just mouthed the words to me, "It will be okay." And that has stuck with me forever. Like, I've never been able to forget about it. It was always just something that was there. Like, there was nothing, she said those words, I was able to hear them and see them, and that just really carried me through that day, and it's continued to make an impact on my life.
Well, and I remember several years ago when I had an accident on the corner near our home. My truck was absolutely destroyed, but I'm sitting there on the side of the road, on the shoulder of the road. Cars are starting to stop. My driver's window had broken. I'm bleeding from the side, from my ear. And all of a sudden, there's a guy standing at my driver's door window. And he's talking to me in this very calm and measured voice. He says, you know, emergency vehicles are on the way. He says, are you okay? Do you need help with anything? He talked to me for maybe 10 minutes until the emergency people showed up. And then this guy just kind of drifted away. I have no idea who he was. Never figured out who he was. He may, you know, apparently was in one of the other cars that had stopped. But he just made a point of stopping and talking to me and making sure I was okay until the emergency personnel got there. And he disappeared. Same kind of thing.
Some of those I think those kind of experiences kind of carry us forward in many different ways and we wonder how we might have impacted somebody else the same way without even trying to. I am sure that lady that mouthed those words to me probably doesn't even remember doing it, but it makes a difference. And another thought I was like, how are we as a country failing to express love? Or even if we don't want to think about it as a country, closer to home. Or are we failing to express love?
I think, I feel a lot lately like our society, locally and nationally, we are so quick to put labels on people, and then once we label them as, you know, the liberal left or the conservative right, and then once we put that label on there, it's like we've taken away their humanity and our empathy for their humanity, if you will. You know, we did that, still do that to Black people in some instances of, you know, we just label them as this Black person, and therefore certain things we put on that label,
Mhm.
and we don't value their humanity.
I feel like as an individual, I find ways to look the other way, not engage in the conversation, you know, like, and part of, there's admittedly part of me that does it out of, I don't wanna ask you if I can help, you know, do you need any help? Can I help you? Because of this, I don't wanna make it worse for you. I don't want to put you in a comfortable situation where you feel like you then have to tell me what's going on. And, you know, so when somebody's struggling, there's more of a hesitation, I would say, to reach out and say, how can I help you? Is there anything you need? And I think that has a lot to do with like just mental health in general, whether it's in our community or the country at large, the broader country. Because it's a negative stigma, you know, that's just the way we see it. And so, I don't know, I notice that in myself, that I don't feel I'm as quick to offer help as I maybe would have been in the past.
Brings up something that I was watching, something about mental health and engaging, and this story about a young man who actually tried to commit suicide off the Golden State Bridge, and he told kind of his story a little bit. His dad had been asking him, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And he finally convinced his dad he was okay that morning. And then he got on a bus, but he was doing kind of, you know, the same reaction that I had in the car. He was crying a lot and stuff, and he was trying to engage with people on this bus a little bit, expecting somebody would say, you know, are you okay? Can I help you? And nobody did. And when he got to, I don't know, somewhere on the Golden Gate Bridge where he was getting off, the bus, you know, he's crying extremely, and the bus driver just looked at him and said, "Are you getting off?" And that was his signal. He said that meant to him like nobody cares. Nobody cares. And so I wonder if we really need to rethink what it means to care and what it means to live in community. He did jump off the bridge, and his dad, but he said the minute his hands left the thing, it was a regret. He just prayed all the way down to the bottom, all the way down to through his whole experience. And now it's like, I still struggle with mental health a lot and felt those thoughts, but I now reach out to everybody around me.
I think nowadays too, you're more aware of people that you don't know if you go and help somebody, if they're gonna, you know, hit you or take your purse or take your car or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You're not as trusting.
Yeah.
Which makes us less compassionate.
Well, because like your story of somebody pulling over and helping you with your tire. I remember one time, Mike, your car didn't work, didn't start in Woodbury, and you called me. We must have, well, at least one of you was born. But I remember you calling and saying, "Oh yeah, this guy's giving me a ride home," because it was a new neighborhood in Woodbury that you were putting in, and it was an older guy. He had just lost his wife, so he was very lonely, and I think he used to sit out and watch you guys work. But so he calls me, he was like, yeah, well, this guy's giving me a ride. I'm like, from Woodbury? This does not, get out of that vehicle. You know, it was very,
Are you kidding me?
uh-huh. And so I had to go pick you up in Maple Plain, I think is where he dropped you off. But it's like, okay, first of all, who goes, yeah, I'll drive you from Woodbury to Waverly. You know, like, no, nobody, he wasn't on his way. But it made me very uncomfortable of, you know, him getting in the car with him, where it's no different than will you help me with my tire, but
Yep.
it's that leeriness. Mhm.
So why are we so untrusting? I struggle with that. I
There's so
think,
many bad people.
but hasn't there always been? Why is it
Yeah.
more prevalent now
Maybe
to
because
not trust that someone wants to help and trust that? I don't know. I feel like we are less trusting and I don't know why. I'm not sure why.
Media.
Media?
It spreads the bad stuff because it's the only thing that people are worried about. They'll only show people that. They're not going to show them, hey, someone, you might get them every now and then where someone's like, oh, hey, coming out, but they'll always be the news, someone was kidnapped or somebody was assaulted at their vehicle. They'll show you that. They'll never show you, hey, someone helped clean up this sewer drain so the street wasn't flooded.
Another point with that is false news spreads way more quickly because it's like,
It's built for clicks.
yeah, because it usually comes out first and it's like, oh, this story's interesting. And then when the real one comes out, everybody's like, this one's the right one though.
Because you saw it
Because you
first.
saw it first and it's like, oh, I know this one better. When it's not actually the real one.
But good news doesn't sell on the media.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Well, I think it's all those things, but on top of that, or maybe underneath that, we're kind of like the proverbial frog getting boiled alive in a bucket of water. I think we're stressed now in ways I don't even think I certainly don't always recognize on a daily basis. 2 years of a pandemic, you've got a war in Ukraine, you got Putin talking about using nuclear weapons, you got climate crisis, racial issues. It just feels like the list gets longer and longer and nothing ever comes off the list. And I think that's having a very large effect right now.
Because our compassion well is so empty at this point because the list of issues is just keeps expanding.
I think part of that comes from, and it comes in on a lot of different levels. I think we as a society as a whole, and I'm talking global society, we've lost the ability to listen to the story of the other person. We don't, like the bus driver or the guy jumping off the bridge and, the bus passengers and everybody, nobody talking to him. That kind of issue. We don't take the time to learn about what somebody else's problems maybe they just need somebody to talk to them. It sounds like that young guy did. We don't hear about the good stories and like some of the guys said, all you hear is the bad things.
Mhm.
But we don't have the good experiences because we don't take the time to get involved. To simply have a conversation.
So going back to, I think maybe one of the first things you had said, like what does our congregation do to show love and that? So maybe besides just giving to something like a 1 great hour of sharing. It is about talking about it outside of these walls and this experience. So we are showing more of those good stories and, promoting that not all people are evil and we don't have to be leery of everybody, So maybe it's not just about the giving, but about the talking about it too.
Yes. Sharing those good stories of things that you do in places that you run into and experiences, because if we don't share them, we forget them.
And I think really, as far as what do we do, all you have to do is look as far as our front windows and the signage and such that we have in those windows. And people in this community recognize us for that. We've made some statements that we support some of the marginalized groups in the area, whether it's the LGBTQ community or people of color. We're doing an outward expression for everybody that walks past our building that we do care about some of those folks.
I think one of the things that we may not realize at all about one of those, that expression, is somebody walking by those windows might feel like, oh, this is a place that I can be accepted, can make them feel a little bit better about who they are, even without having that conversation or that interaction personally. I still think about the story that you told, Ole, a while ago. It was several years ago, but somebody left a letter at your mailbox, and they just said every time they drove by your place, and there was all are welcome here, a few other signs that just made them feel, okay, I'm not evil. I'm not less than.
That was similar to the experience you had that you shared, where, yes, that young woman felt that there was some hope out there for her.
Yeah.
Based on something as simple as a sign.
So I feel like what I'm hearing is there's big things, but there's lots of little things. When I walk, I make a point of just waving at the cars that go by, just because.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes any impact on anybody. Sometimes they wave back, sometimes they don't. But, so many times you walk down the street and people avoid eye contact. And I'll smile at people I just feel like that's important to do. I have no idea if I ever made an impact on anybody by doing it. But maybe I have, I don't know.
Yeah.
It doesn't cost me anything to do it.
I do remember, it's simple things like that, though. Like yesterday, I was out driving, and I passed a vehicle it looked like they were probably coming from the airport going off to, it was a travel van or whatever. And somebody just inadvertently, hi. I'm like, oh, hi. That's awesome. That made, it made my day. But it's so random that it takes you by surprise.
Sure. Like, what you been at?
Well, you could take it that way, but he was smiling, so he wasn't mad at me. But that's the type of, I think that's why it's so special to get some of those reactions, and why the small things make such a difference. And I know that I have made a point of smiling on a consistent basis, similar, especially when I'm interacting or seeing people, because I think it helps me, but it also helps them.
Well, it sends a message that you acknowledge them as a person.
Yes.
Yeah.
And especially with the last couple of years with the pandemic, where we've not been able to gather and socialize and do other things in person with people. Just to have some sort of live face-to-face, like you say, even if it's just a wave as you're walking, says that, yeah, there's still humans out here, not everybody's on a screen, kind of thing.
So I hope that this conversation has kind of sparked some new ways to think about love, in particular, like how to express love in community, the way that Paul has kind of envisioned. That's what I hope for today. Thank you so much for joining in the
I
conversation.
have one more story.
Mm-hmm.
So I just thought of it, or I just remembered this. So I think it's either in Japan or somewhere where it's the #1 suicide bridge out there, or just in the world in general. And there's this dude who he goes around, just walks the bridge every day. And whenever somebody like tries to jump off, he holds their hand and he talks to them. If they need a place to stay, he's rented a apartment at a hotel. He lets them stay the night. He gives them like a couple days there, and he lets them, and he just helps them out. And he gives them, I think, he might get free food at the hotel. And he just helps, and most of them rethink, and they're like, okay, I got past it. Because a lot of, because it's like that a lot of suicide people, it's like that one attempt. If they make it through that one attempt at their lowest point, they're like, oh wait, I actually want to be alive and I want to do these things. And then they get past it.
Yes.
They just need that push.
Push that little bit of help, a little bit of love and outreach.
And he gives that to them.
Yeah. That's a very unique and powerful way to show love.
But even the simple things like, they're, and it's starting to gain a little traction and a little movement. You go to a drive-through at a fast food place and you offer to pay for the people in the car behind you. Whether it's simply a cup of coffee or it's a meal for a family. Again, we don't know what those people are dealing with and, what little show of affection towards them can do for their day. But oftentimes then you wind up hearing that, well, somebody did so-and-so, somebody did this for me, so I'm going to do this as well, and it continues to travel on down.
And I did happen to witness one just recently in Buffalo here. I don't know, somebody just had picked out 2 bikes. Both their kids had outgrown their bikes, and somebody just walked up, was in front of them they had rung up to do their stuff, and the person right behind them just walked up and said, I'm taking care of the bikes. Or the whole thing, because that was all they got. And it was just,
Yeah. We experienced that at the ice cream store at Scooters. Nope, somebody gave them a $100 bill and said, just use it till it runs out. So we got free ice cream that day.
That was sweet.
Yeah. But, just a random little thing, but it makes you feel good that somebody would do that.
Yeah. Nice, positive. All right, well, thank you, everybody. Appreciate the conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.